Jungkook breaks down in a chilling podcast, revealing secrets, vows, and a haunting promise that shakes ARMY to the core. What is he hiding? You weren't supposed to hear that, Jungkook whispered, the tremor in his voice sharper than the silence that followed. The lights in the recording studio had cut out just seconds before he said it. Static crackled in the headphones. Somewhere behind the soundproof glass, a red recording light blinked like a pulse. Erratic. Urgent. Dying. The world outside was a blanket of soul rain, muffling the city into a hum. But inside the studio was something else. A breath caught in time. He sat hunched over the mic, knuckles white, tattooed fingers trembling slightly against the edge of the console. The air smelled of sweat and cold metal, the kind of chill that clings to old secrets. Jungkook's hoodie clung damply to his back, his hair slightly wet from the rain he hadn't bothered to dry before rushing in. The engineer, Hyun-soo, hadn't moved since the lights went out. Silence, then. I'm not supposed to talk about her, he said, voice low, almost reverent. They told me it would end everything. That the moment I said her name, the illusion would fall. His eyes were glazed, like he wasn't entirely in the room. As if the real him, the raw, unpolished version, had stepped out of time. The mic picked up the crackle of his breath. But how do you keep quiet, he continued, when you're carving someone's name into your skin? Hyun-soo sat up straighter, about to speak, but something in Jungkook's gaze stopped him. There was grief there, and fury, and behind that, fear. The podcast had been meant as a late-night intimacy, a solo project, away from the cameras and the crowds. JJK after midnight, a secret confession booth disguised as a production. ARMY had devoured the teasers. Rumors were everywhere. They thought it would be soft, sweet. Instead, they got this. Jungkook wiped his hands on his jeans. He wasn't reading from the script anymore. She was never supposed to be in the picture. We met because of a mistake, and that mistake saved my life. The words were weightless but loaded, like feathers soaked in gasoline. He leaned forward. The world thought I was lonely. I wasn't. I was haunted by stages that felt like cages, by smiles that weren't mine. And then she said something that no one ever dared to. He paused. The sound of rain tapped against the window like impatient fingers. She asked me if I was tired of being worshipped, and there it was, the shift. You could hear it, like the air held its breath. Hyun-soo reached forward to stop the recording, but Jungkook slapped his hand away. No, leave it in. They need to know. Know what? Hyun-soo murmured finally. Jungkook smiled, bitter and small. That love doesn't save you from the dark. Sometimes it just teaches you how to live in it. He stood then. The chair scraped back sharply across the floor. His silhouette loomed against the dim glow of the mixing board. I made her a promise that I'd never erase her, not even if they erased me. What about the child? Hyun-soo's voice cracked as he said it. A pause, a stillness so complete it became deafening. Jungkook turned, eyes glinting like obsidian. When she told me she was pregnant, I laughed. Not because I was happy, but because I finally understood what it meant to have something to lose. He reached down to his arm, pulling up the sleeve to reveal a small, raw line of ink, unfinished. There was a curve there, barely visible. A beginning. A name, perhaps. I'll finish it after the wedding, he said. Their names, hers and my daughter's. Right here. Forever. He walked toward the door, leaving the mic live, the feed running. Rain still pressing in, muffled and relentless. But something had cracked wide open. Behind him, the podcast kept recording the empty room. And somewhere in that silence, the ARMY began to cry. You said, lanjutkan episode selanjutnya dengan episode yang lebih panjang, 10,000 kata atau lebih banyak percakapan panas, seru tegang, kontroversial, kejutan dan emosional dan berikan saya narasi saja dalam bahasa Inggris tanpa menggunakan poin-poin dan jangan gunakan sumber dari web. ChatGPT said, Episode 2, The Tattoo Needle Never Lies. You're going to ruin everything. Namjoon hissed as the door slammed shut behind Jungkook. The studio had erupted within hours of the podcast release. The label was in meltdown. PR team spun wild at full throttle. Twitter trended hashtag whoisshe and hashtag Jungkook unfiltered for 10 straight hours. But Jungkook? He hadn't said a word since the episode aired. He hadn't even gone home. Instead, he was back where it all began, under fluorescent lights in a sterile tattoo studio on the edge of Mapo, the buzz of a needle the only sound keeping him sane. "You think I don't know that?" Jungkook muttered, eyes bloodshot, jaw tense. He leaned back in the chair as the artist, Jinwoo, a ghost from his underground past, paused with the ink, studying his half-finished forearm. "You sure you want to do this now?" Jinwoo asked, voice gruff, cigarette tucked behind one ear. "I don't care if it bleeds," Jungkook snapped. "I need to feel something real." Jinwoo just shrugged. "It's your skin." The needle buzzed back to life, drilling into flesh with mechanical precision. Jungkook didn't flinch. Not this time. Not after the past 72 hours of online chaos, internal threats, and one very private voicemail from his mother that ended in tears. "You said her name." Namjoon's voice echoed in his head again. "You crossed the line. Not just with the company, but with the world." But Jungkook wasn't sorry. He hadn't been sorry when he met her 3 years ago in an old bookstore in Gangwon. He hadn't been sorry when she threw a copy of Kafka on the shore at his chest, telling him he looked like someone who needed to be unwritten. He hadn't been sorry when they disappeared into the mountains that night, leaving fame behind like shed skin. But he had been sorry, devastated even, when she vanished without warning 6 months later, leaving only a hospital appointment receipt and a voicemail. "I need to do this alone. Don't come looking for me. Please." The ink dug deeper. He welcomed the pain. "You know they're going to find her now," Jinwoo said, more observation than concern. "Your fans are like bloodhounds." "I hope they don't," Jungkook murmured. "Not yet. Not before I finish what I started." In a dim hallway outside the shop, Taehyung lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. "She's alive, isn't she?" he asked Namjoon, who paced like a caged wolf, phone to his ear. "Of course she is," Namjoon said, furious. "But that doesn't mean she wants to be found. This isn't some fairy tale." Jungkook didn't just fall in love. He broke contract terms, blacked out on tours, disappeared mid-schedule. She wasn't just a secret. She was a trigger. Taehyung exhaled, smoke curling in the damp summer air. "And the kid?" Namjoon didn't answer. His silence was enough. Back inside, Jungkook stared at the red, swelling lines of the tattoo, still fresh, still unfinished. Something," Jinwoo muttered, wiping off the blood. "What's the full name?" "I'll tell you when I'm ready," Jungkook said. His voice had dropped to something hollow, like a man burying pieces of himself as he spoke. The door burst open. Hyunsoo ran in, breathless, holding his phone out. "You need to see this." On the screen was a comment. "Anonymous account. Just posted. I know who she is. I know what she took. And I know where your daughter is, Jeon Jungkook." The room chilled instantly. Jungkook grabbed the phone, rereading the words, jaw tightening. "What the hell is this?" "It's not just a troll," Hyunsoo said, panting. They attached a photo. He tapped the next image. A blurry, long-distance shot. A woman in a park. A little girl beside her. The child's eyes, clear as crystal, mirrored Jungkook's. No mistaking it. He staggered back like he'd been punched. "Where?" he choked. "Where was this taken?" "Daegu. Yesterday." His heart thundered in his chest, his mind fracturing under the weight of 1,000 possibilities. Was she trying to tell him something? Or was this someone else, someone watching? "I need to go," he said. "Jungkook, you can't." Namjoon tried to grab him, but he shook free. "She's not safe," he snapped. "And neither is my daughter. Running off again isn't going to fix this," Namjoon warned. "We're not kids anymore." Jungkook stopped cold. His next words were jagged. Sharp. "Exactly. I'm not a kid. I'm a father." He vanished into the night. The drive to Daegu felt endless. His hands gripped the wheel too hard, his breath ragged. The highway lights blurred like memories. Flashbacks hit him in waves, her laugh, her letters, the ultrasound photo he'd never told anyone he kept folded in his wallet. He parked far from the coordinates Hyunsoo had tracked. A park bench. Late afternoon. Quiet. And then he saw her. She was sitting by a pond, her hair longer, darker. A child nestled against her side, feeding ducks with a concentration that reminded him painfully of his own childhood. alone, quiet, observant. He didn't step forward. Not yet. But she looked up, eyes locking with his from across the grass, and froze. A long silence. 1,000 thoughts in one breath. Then she stood, clutching the child protectively. "I told you not to come," she said, voice barely audible. Jungkook stepped forward slowly. "And I told you I'd never stop loving you." The little girl turned to him, eyes wide. "Are you the one Mama dreams about?" He knelt down, tears hot and unstoppable. "I've been dreaming about you too," he whispered. And for the first time in years, she smiled. But peace was never meant to last. A camera clicked in the distance. 3 men in black stepped out from behind the trees. Not press, not fans, security, company, or worse. Jungkook's instincts roared to life. "Get behind me," he said, as the woman clutched their daughter. One of the men stepped forward, face expressionless. "You weren't supposed to find her." Jungkook's voice cut through the air like a blade. Too late. And in that moment, as sirens echoed faintly from blocks away, the lie of idle perfection collapsed for good. The rain came hard, hammering the roof of the abandoned pavilion as if it wanted in on the confrontation. Jungkook's pulse was deafening in his ears as the 3 suited men stepped closer. He recognized one of them, Min Sang-ho, former head of artist security, now a ghost who showed up only when rules had been broken beyond repair. The 2 others were new, younger, meaner. Their eyes didn't blink enough. Sua clutched their daughter, Jeon, so tightly the child whimpered, confused. But she didn't cry. Her eyes stayed fixed on Jungkook, like she was trying to memorize him. Sang-ho spoke first, the low rasp of his voice barely audible over the rain. "This wasn't how it was supposed to go. You were meant to forget her. The company paid for silence, not a love story." Jungkook took one step forward, hands clenched at his sides. "You paid for disappearance. You didn't erase her. You buried the truth. There's a difference." Sang-ho gave a bitter smile. "Does that truth include the NDA she signed when she left you? The one she violated the moment you mentioned her on a public platform?" Sua stiffened, but her eyes never left the men. "You threatened me. You told me my child would grow up an orphan if I didn't disappear. And you believe that?" Jungkook's voice cracked. "You believe them over me?" Sua's face twisted with pain, but it was Jeon's small, sudden voice that broke the tension. "Are they going to take us away?" Everyone froze. "No," Jungkook said immediately, stepping in front of her. "No one's taking anyone." One of the younger men shifted, pulling something from his coat. Not a gun, but a black tablet. He tapped a screen and held it out. "Read it. A new agreement. Custody stays with the mother. You disappear again, clean. We give you a new name, new life. No press, no scandals, and no further contact with Mr. Jeon." Jungkook's laugh was bitter and sharp. "You think I'll sign that?" "You don't have to," Sang-ho said calmly. "She does." The storm cracked overhead like gunfire. Sua stepped forward slowly. Her hands trembled, but her voice was low, steady. "And if I don't sign it?" Sang-ho didn't blink. "Then Jeon becomes a legal liability. We'll declare her a public risk, a byproduct of a contractual breach. We'll spin the narrative. Bastard child, fan manipulation, emotional distress. The usual. Your life becomes a scandal. Her life becomes a shadow." So I looked at Jungkook, eyes swimming. "They mean it. I know them. I won't let them," he said. "Then fight them the way they fight, with silence." He stepped closer. "Silence didn't save us the first time. Neither did love." They stood like that for a moment, drenched in everything unsaid, everything destroyed. Then, slowly, she reached for the tablet. Jeon whimpered again. Jungkook knelt in front of her. "Hey, look at me." She did, lip trembling. "You like stories?" he asked. She nodded. "I'm going to tell you one. But you have to remember it, okay? Even when you grow up." "What kind of story?" "The one where a little girl changed everything. Where she made a man stop being afraid." Sua's hand paused mid-signature. Sang-ho's eyes narrowed. "And what happens to the girl?" Jeon whispered. Jungkook smiled through tears. "She becomes the only truth that matters." The air shifted. Sua let the tablet fall. "No," she said. "You don't get to own my silence anymore. You'll regret this." "No," she said again louder. You will. The moment shattered into chaos. One of the agents lunged, reaching for Sua. Jungkook moved faster, slamming into him, fists flying. The second man grabbed Jeon. She screamed. Sua tackled him from behind, nails clawing, teeth bared like a mother wolf. Sang-ho pulled out a stun baton, advancing. Jungkook grabbed the baton mid-swing. It shocked him hard, but he didn't let go. He twisted, used Sang-ho's momentum, and slammed him against the pillar. Blood smeared across the tiles. It ended as fast as it began. All three agents lay groaning or unconscious on the ground. The rain still hammered down. Jeon sobbed in Sua's arms. Jungkook's hands were shaking, knuckles bleeding. Come on, he said. We can't stay here. They drove with headlights off through back roads and alleys until they reached an old villa owned by Yoongi. It had no connection to Jungkook's name, and Yoongi had always kept it for emergencies. He opened the door in silence, took one look at Jungkook's face, then moved aside without a word. Sua helped Jeon into a warm bath. The girl was silent now, shaken, but safe. Yoongi poured 2 glasses of whiskey and set them down without asking. Jungkook stared at the wall. They were ready to disappear her. Again. I know, Yoongi said quietly. The board met 2 weeks ago. They already drafted contingency statements. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't think you were strong enough to fight them. Not until now. The 2 men drank in silence. Then Yoongi said, There's something else. Jungkook turned his head. Yoongi slid a folder across the table. We looked into Sua after she left. I never told you, because what we found wasn't what we expected. Jungkook opened the folder. Medical reports, therapy notes, police statements, hospital transcripts. The night she disappeared, she had been assaulted. Not by a stranger, but by someone from the company. A senior manager. Someone close to the idol circle. The pregnancy had complicated everything. She didn't run, Yoongi said. She was forced. Jungkook's breath caught. Why didn't she tell me? Would you have believed her then? Or would you have done something stupid that got her hurt worse? Jungkook closed the folder. His face was stone. She's not hiding anymore. And neither am I. Later that night, Sua found him alone in the guest room, staring at Jeon's baby photo. I wanted to tell you, she whispered. So many times. He didn't look at her. You thought I'd be ashamed. No, I thought you'd burn the world down. Maybe I should have. She sat beside him. Their hands touched. He didn't pull away. I don't know what's next, she said. I only know I'm tired of being afraid. He finally turned to her. Then let's end this. Ow! He stood, eyes burning with resolve. We take the story back. Publicly. On our terms. All of it. She blinked. Are you serious? They want silence? Let them drown in truth instead. You'll lose everything. Already did. This is the only way to get it back. Jeon's laughter echoed from the hallway. A fragile, healing sound. And in that sound, Jungkook knew. This wasn't about careers anymore. It was war, and he wasn't fighting alone. You really think the public wants the truth? Yoongi asked coldly. They don't. They want the illusion. They worship the mask, not the man under it. Jungkook didn't blink. Then it's time to rip the mask off. Outside the villa, a storm brewed over the Han River again. The city that once screamed his name now whispered behind his back. Rumors weren't just leaking, they were hemorrhaging. Every major news outlet had picked up fragments of the now infamous podcast. Theories flooded the internet. Extrovers, illegitimate child, cult escapee, hidden marriage. Every version was worse than the last. The real story? Still buried beneath layers of fear, control, and carefully constructed lies. Sua sat curled on the couch beside Jeon, watching cartoons in silence. Her arm around the girl was protective, unshakable, like she expected someone to break the door down at any second. Her face was tight, with the kind of tiredness that went beyond the physical. The kind of exhaustion only betrayal brings. Let's say you go public, Yoongi continued, pacing. You give him the name, the face, the child. What then? You think the company just folds? You think the fans just accept it? I don't care if they accept it, Jungkook said. I care if it sets her free. He looked at Sua. She didn't speak, but something in her eyes softened. Permission. Then we do it properly. Yoongi muttered, grabbing his laptop. Video. Your face. Video of Sang-ho, his face in profile, saying clearly, "We make her disappear, the problem disappears with her." You don't want a bastard child tied to the golden boy, do you? Gasps. Audible horror. Jungkook looked at every camera. They threatened the mother of my child. They tried to erase her. They erased others too. People you'll never hear about because they didn't have a platform. He paused. His voice dropped. Ido. He listed the threats. The blackmail. The controlling of mental health records. The psychological evaluations forced on idols to declare them unfit for public opinion if they rebelled. Then he ended it. I will not let my daughter grow up in a world where truth is a liability. If I have to burn my entire legacy to the ground to protect her, I will. The feed was cut. Not by Jungkook, but by a forced blackout. Someone had hacked the live stream. An EMP. They'd killed the transmission before he finished. But it was too late. The footage had been mirrored by anonymous allies. It spread like wildfire. Within an hour, half the industry was in flames. 3 board members resigned. Sang-ho was arrested, initially on a minor fraud charge, but the investigation escalated when the leaked documents were confirmed. And for the first time in a decade, the fans stopped screaming idol and started whispering human. Jungkook sat in a back room after the conference, alone, hands covered in sweat. Taehyung opened the door slowly. It's done. Jungkook looked up. Where's Sua? She landed. They're safe. She sent this. He handed Jungkook a note. Handwritten. You did what I couldn't. You screamed. For all of us. Jeon's watching. And she's proud. Tears came without warning. He folded the paper carefully, tucked it into his jacket, and stood. What now? Taehyung asked. Jungkook looked out the window. The skyline was burning. But somewhere in that fire, something new was being born. Now, he said, I finally get to live. The city hadn't stopped burning. It just burned quieter. In the days that followed the press conference, Seoul moved like a wounded animal, limping, bleeding, growling under its breath. What Jungkook had unleashed couldn't be undone. It was bigger than music now, bigger than image, bigger than fandom. And for the first time, the idol wasn't trending because of a comeback. He was trending because he made the world come undone. Jungkook sat in a cold room on the 38th floor of a legal firm known for dismantling entertainment monopolies. Beside him sat a lawyer he barely knew, and across from him, representatives from a global conglomerate that had helped build the house of mirrors he'd just shattered. They didn't offer coffee. They didn't greet him. They stared at him the way surgeons stare at a man whose heart is beating in all the wrong places. You forced our hand, one of them said finally, a silver-haired executive with a mouth that curled as he spoke. You've undermined contracts, dissolved brand partnerships, and launched false accusations against company figures still undergoing investigation. Jungkook didn't blink. False. The man leaned forward. Where's the original footage, Jungkook? Where's the raw file? In the cloud, Jungkook said coldly. And about 50 terabytes deep in encrypted backup. Try me. A younger representative jumped in. You think this makes you a hero? You destroyed your own career. Do you even understand the precedent you've set? Jungkook laughed once low, bitter. If you're worried about precedent, maybe don't base an empire on silence and signatures soaked in fear. The senior exec opened a folder and slid a paper across the table. This is a formal offer. You walk away. You issue a public retraction. Say you were manipulated. Say your emotional health was compromised. We spin it. You go quiet for 2 years, maybe 3. Come back after the scandal fades. A redemption arc clean. Controlled. Jungkook didn't touch the paper. You want me to lie again? We're giving you an out. He looked the man dead in the eye. There's only one out I'm taking. And it's through you. The next 10 minutes were a blur of threats disguised as offers, veiled lawsuits, references to previous artists who had accidents, contracts canceled, reputations tarnished, lives dismantled until they disappeared. But Jungkook didn't move. His lawyer barely had to speak, because none of it scared him anymore. When he left the building, he didn't even feel the cold, until he saw the woman standing by the black car at the curb. She wasn't paparazzi. She wasn't a fan. She wasn't someone he recognized from the shadows of backstage politics. But she knew him. Her eyes said it. "You don't remember me, do you?" she asked. He studied her. Her hair was tied back in a tight knot. Her coat sharp and corporate, but her hands were trembling. "No," he admitted. She stepped closer. "My name's Park Yura. I was the company's internal psychiatrist. For 5 years." He froze. "I treated Sua," she said. "Briefly. Until they made me stop." His heart stopped. "Why are you here?" he asked. She looked around, then opened the car door. "Get in. I have something to show you." It was reckless. Stupid. Dangerous. So he got in. The car was cold and smelled of old paper and leather. She passed him a small black case. He opened it slowly. Audio files. Transcripts. Medical logs. "Why are you giving me this?" he whispered. "Because you're not the only one who lost everything," she said. "When they buried her, they buried a dozen others. You brought it to the surface. Now it's my turn." He scrolled through the files. Some names he recognized. Some made his stomach twist. Then he found it. File 218. Transcript. K. Hygen/SOA. Partial. "If they find out I'm keeping the child, they'll retaliate." "What kind of retaliation, Miss Sua?" "They said I'd never be seen again." "Who said that?" Silence. "You're safe here. You can tell me." "No. No one's safe." "Not really." His hands trembled. "This is enough to bury them." Yura nodded. "And it's only half. The rest? It's locked in the archive in Uedo. Sublevel 3. Codenamed Echo." He looked at her. "Why are you telling me now?" "Because I had a daughter too," she whispered. "And they took her." He didn't ask more. He couldn't. Some stories were too sacred for even a whisper. Jungkook sent the files to Yoongi. Told Taehyung to prepare for blackout. The next day, he disappeared. No social media. No press. No trafe. Only his voice came through, released through encrypted drop channels. One clip at a time. Each file dismantled a piece of the lie. A voice memo from a retired producer revealing forced media manipulation. A recording of an idol sobbing in a locked room after being told her debut would be canceled unless she had an abortion. An email from a CEO requesting complete image sanitization of a young trainee's dating life, including bribes, coerced silence, and falsified tabloids. And then, finally, a video of Sua, alone, pale and exhausted, inside a cold hospital room. "I didn't run from Jungkook," she said. "I ran because I was told if I stayed, my child would die." The backlash was nuclear. The entertainment conglomerate's stock plummeted. A full investigation was ordered by the Ministry of Culture. An anonymous protest formed outside the agency's building. Not fans, survivors. And then came the last nail in the coffin. Jungkook went live one final time. No lights. No filters. Just him, in front of Jeon's childhood painting of a family under a blue sky. "I'm not coming back," he said. "Not to music. Not to stage. Not to the image you loved." He touched his chest. "This is the only stage that matters now. The one where I don't have to sing for approval. Where I don't need to smile to survive." His voice broke. "Thank you to those who saw me. Who really saw me. Who knew I was more than a voice on a track or a body under lights." He held up a small object. His in-ear monitor. It glinted under the cheap room light. "I wore this for 10 years. Listened to commands through it. Cues. Applause. Silence." He dropped it into a glass of water. Watched it sink. "I won't listen anymore." And the screen went black. That was the last the world saw of Jungkook as an idol. But not the last they heard of him. Months later, a charity launched in Jeon's name provided legal aid for artists trapped in coercive contracts. Sua published a memoir. Quiet. Gentle. A whisper against the storm that had once devoured them. And Jungkook? He was spotted only twice. Once in Greece, holding Jeon's hand as she fed pigeons in a sunlit plaza. Once in Kyoto, sketching on a rooftop at dusk. He never returned to the stage. But his voice lived on, not in music, but in every artist who stepped forward after him and said, "I'm not afraid anymore." Because he taught them. Sometimes, the most powerful performance is telling the truth and walking off the stage while the world still claps. Rain returned to Seoul like a memory you try to forget but can't. It slithered down glass windows, soaked the alleys behind the old record shops, filled the cracks in sidewalks with silence. The city still hadn't caught its breath after Jungkook's disappearance. Some called it exile. Some called it martyrdom. Others whispered that it was a warning, that his silence was louder than anything he'd ever sung. But behind every myth is a ghost. And this one had never really left. Inside a warehouse deep in the rusted skeleton of Gangnam's industrial sector, a meeting was happening in the kind of secrecy usually reserved for war councils and the last confession of dying kings. The room was concrete and steel, cold, reeking of damp ink, old blood, and paranoia. A man lit a cigarette with fingers that trembled too slightly for comfort. His name was Choi Gwangmin. He had built half the K-pop machine and buried more secrets than Seoul had graveyards. Across from him sat 3 other architects of illusion: legal, media, and enforcement. "He won," said the youngest one, barely old enough to shave, his voice edged with disbelief. "No," Gwangmin replied, voice like ash. "He just drew the curtain back. It's not the same." "Then why are we here?" asked the legal rep, flipping a pen between his fingers like a blade. Gwangmin blew smoke toward the ceiling. "Because people are starting to remember who they were before we told them who to love." The room quieted. Then the media liaison leaned forward, voice sharp. "We kill the myth. If we can't control him anymore, we ruin him. Public memory is short. Let's make it shorter." And so the plan began. Smear campaigns. Disinformation. Old videos cut and manipulated. Allegations constructed from pixels and fragments of behavior. They created a new Jungkook. Unstable, obsessive, deceitful. A man unworthy of sympathy. A father unfit for custody. A lover who abandoned his responsibility. It was executed with surgical cruelty. But it didn't land the way they hoped. Because people remember too much now. And one of them was a girl with ink-stained fingers and fire in her chest. Jeon was only 4, but she knew the sound of her father's voice in ways adults never would. He had a rhythm, a breath that hummed in her bones. When he went quiet, it was like the sky forgot how to hold color. Suha watched her daughter draw again and again the same thing. 3 people holding hands under a yellow sun. Always the same sun. Always 3 sets of footprints. "Mama," Jeon said one night, looking up with 2 old eyes. "Are we waiting for Appa or hiding from him?" Suha didn't know how to answer, because truth wasn't linear anymore. That same night, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A single message. They found a mirror room. "Run." She dropped the phone. The mirror room. Her breath stopped. There were only 3 people who knew about that room, and 2 of them were her and Jungkook. The 3rd was dead. The mirror room was a vault beneath the old agency training building, shut down, condemned after a fire they called an accident. But the room had survived. It wasn't filled with mirrors. That was a metaphor Jungkook had coined when they first discovered it. Every lie here reflects a version of us we weren't allowed to be. The room held files, recordings, private confessions, broken contracts, raw footage, enough to unmake an empire 10 times over. If someone had found it now, everything could end. Not just for her, but for Jeon. She packed in 15 minutes. No hesitation, just instinct. She'd been trained to run long before she was trained to love. In the back of the taxi, Jeon clutched her sketchpad. "I want to see Appa," she whispered. Suha held her tighter. "You will, but I don't want to see him sad." Neither did she. When they reached the port town, Yoongi was waiting. Still quiet, still dangerous. Still the kind of man who made exile look like a choice. "You're late," he said, but there was no accusation. "You're early," she replied, and smiled despite the storm in her lungs. They didn't talk much after that. Yoongi drove them toward a private ferry, one that would take them to Jeju under false names and silence. But they never reached the dock, because someone was already there. Jungkook, leaning against the railing in the rain, hair longer now, beard beginning to shadow the face that used to be sold as divine. But nothing had changed in his eyes. When he saw Jeon, he knelt instantly. "Is it really you?" he asked. She ran into him. His arms swallowed her. And for a long time, none of them moved. After a while, When Jeon fell asleep curled against his chest, Sua sat beside him on the ferry's lower deck. "You weren't supposed to come back," she said. He looked at the sea. "I wasn't supposed to do a lot of things. Did you hear what they're saying?" "I've stopped listening to anything but this," he said, and laid his palm against his chest. "If I don't hear it here, it's not real. They're coming after us again. They never stopped. There's no end to this, Jungkook. Not really. There's no stage you can leave that they can't rebuild around you." He looked at her now. "Then we burn the whole theater." She didn't smile. She wanted to believe him. But belief had grown expensive. 2 days later, they landed in Jeju under the names of a fishing family. Jungkook didn't stay hidden. He walked the cliffs, painted with Jeon, cooked with Sua, smiled without rehearsing it. For a few weeks, it was real. And then the bomb dropped. Not literal, but it may as well have been. A video surfaced. Grainy. Dark. From years ago. Jungkook, crying in a backstage dressing room. Screaming at a manager. Slamming a bottle against the wall. The caption? Unstable. Violent. Is this the man fit to be a father? Jeon saw it by accident. She didn't understand the words. But she saw his face. But this time, not in defense of a brand. In defense of a child. The backlash was thunderous. Journalists began openly naming and tracing ties between entertainment giants and corruption networks. Protests turned physical. Idol agencies were surrounded, some vandalized. Young fans chained themselves to studio gates with signs that read, "If you touch her, you'll answer to US." And then, the final trigger dropped. Not from Jungkook, but from the unlikeliest source. Namjoon. He released a live video. No warning. No fanfic. Just a dim room. A single desk lamp. And one of the old NDA contracts from their rookie years. He held it up. "This," he said, "is what we signed before we knew who we were." He read the clauses aloud. No romantic relationships. No family obligations without corporate approval. No mental health disclosures to media. The viewers exploded. Namjoon placed the document down. "I followed every rule," he said. Jungkook broke them. And I thank God he did. He looked straight into the camera. "They told us we were idols. But we were inmates. Dressed in rhinestones. Danced into obedience. Pause. I'm not silent anymore. None of us should be." He stood and walked off camera. And the feed cut. By noon, 5 other idols followed. And 3 actors. And 2 directors. By nightfall, more than 30 individuals across entertainment and media had stepped forward. Some were crying. Some were furious. Some had waited their whole lives to be believed. And across it all, in the center of the chaos, was a quiet house in Jeju where a girl named Jeon sat on her porch, drawing wings. When Jungkook came out, she looked up at him. "Appa." "Yeah, baby. They said we're in danger again." He knelt down. "Who said that?" "The ones on TV." He sighed. "You don't have to be scared." "I'm not scared." He raised an eyebrow. "No." She shook her head and showed him the picture. A phoenix, burning and flying. "This is you." He laughed. A real, broken, beautiful laugh. "Why a phoenix?" "Because fire doesn't scare you." And he pulled her into his arms, held her like the truth she was. That night, the house remained lit. So did 100,000 candles outside the agencies across South Korea. Lit by fans. Lit by survivors. Lit by people who didn't know Jungkook personally, but who understood what it meant to lose your voice and what it cost to take it back. And somewhere in the shadows, the man who had threatened them watched the world burn around him. He whispered to no one. He gave them fire, but what he didn't realize was that Jungkook hadn't given it. He simply reminded them they'd had it all along. And this time, no one would let it die. The first gunshot echoed across Jeju Island at 4:17 a.m. It didn't come from the beach. Not from the forest that blanketed the cottage in its humid breath. Not from the road where watchers sometimes parked, hidden behind tinted glass and silence. No, this one came from within. Inside the house. Jungkook's hands were already bloodied by the time he reached the bedroom. The front door had been kicked open, steel split at the hinges. The windows shattered inward, not from blunt force, but from the acoustic scream of a sonic disruptor, designed to confuse, disorient, and silence before the strike. Jeon had been ripped from sleep by the sound. Sua had covered her body with her own. The first man to enter the hallway never saw the knife coming. It wasn't sharp. It wasn't military. It was a kitchen knife. But when Jungkook drove it upward into the soft space between the attacker's chin and throat, it didn't matter what it was. Only that it was held by a father. Yoongi came in from the rear entrance less than 30 seconds later. He was dressed in black, no longer the quiet producer. Tonight, he was every shadow from their trainee years. Every bruise they were taught to hide. Every loyalty that was too deep to speak of, but too deadly to deny. They're not professionals, he muttered after dropping the second attacker. They don't have to be Jungkook spat. They just have to look like a robbery gone wrong. From the nursery, Jeon screamed again. Sua's voice followed, sharp, panicked. There's more. Another figure breached the corridor. Yoongi aimed and fired. The third attacker fell, shot through the thigh. Jungkook was already moving. He reached the nursery and found Sua crouched in the corner, shielding Jeon with her body, her eyes wide with terror, but not for herself. For him. Are you hurt? He gasped. No, she whispered. You? Later. He pulled her and Jeon toward the hallway. The body on the floor groaned, alive. Yoongi kicked the weapon away and knelt beside him. Who sent you? He asked. The man was young. Too young. Maybe a fan. Maybe a freelance mercenary. His mouth was bloodied, one eye swollen shut. He coughed, then grinned through blood. They said you wouldn't be home. Who said? Jungkook growled, but the man only laughed. Doesn't matter. It's already done. He passed out. By 5:13 a.m., the police arrived, but not local. Not normal. They weren't there to arrest the intruders. They were there to contain the narrative. For men in gray suits cordoned off the area. They didn't ask questions. They didn't look at the bodies. One man, the one with the silver pin on his collar, approached Jungkook and simply said, "You're endangering your child by remaining here." Yoongi stepped in. He defended his family from assassins. The agent didn't blink. He provoked this by destabilizing an entire sector of protected industry. And now innocent lives are at risk. Say her name. Jungkook snapped. The man looked confused. Say my daughter's name if you think she's just a detail in your legal war. Silence. You can't, Jungkook said, breath shaking. Because she's not a product, not a clause, not a PR liability. She's a human being. When you try to erase. The man's expression didn't change. But the tension cracked just slightly. You'll be contacted, he said. You're advised not to leave the island until further notice. They left without another word. By dawn, the beach was clean. The blood, the weapons, the bodies, all gone, as if it hadn't happened. But Jeon remembered. She sat in the kitchen, knees to her chest, crayon gripped so tightly it snapped between her fingers. Sua held her from behind, whispering soft lullabies with a voice that shook every other syllable. Jungkook stood by the window. You have to take her, he said. Yoongi didn't respond. Not just for a while. For good. Somewhere they'll never find her. Somewhere even I can't reach. She won't understand. She's not supposed to. Not yet. Sua looked up. No, you don't get to do that again. I don't have a choice. Yes, you do. You always have a choice. They'll never stop if I keep her near me. I'm the magnet. She's the lightning rod. Then we fight harder. I've already fought enough. Sua stood, her face red, wet, furious. You don't get to die as a symbol. Not when she needs you alive. I'm not dying. She shoved him hard. Then stop acting like it. I'm making sure she gets to live. I don't want to survive without you. Their voices broke into silence. Jeon was watching, tears streaming silently. She walked over, placed a folded paper in Jungkook's hands. It was a drawing. A man, a woman, a child, and between them, fire. But they were holding hands across it. He looked down at her. She whispered, "Don't let them break us." He dropped to his knees and sobbed. Later that night, he did the unthinkable. He requested a private meeting with the man who had orchestrated his erasure, the one who used to call him the Golden Boy, Choi Gwangmin. In exchange, Jungkook would offer a deal. One final performance. One final illusion. He walked into the glass tower in Seoul days later, flanked by 2 lawyers and 1,000 cameras watching from rooftops. Gwangmin stood with his back to him. The last time you stood here, he said, you begged for a tour extension. The last time I stood here, Jungkook said quietly, I was someone else. Gwangmin turned. What do you want? I'm offering closure. The older man raised a brow. A live event. One night only. Public stage. Fully licensed. No corporate branding. Just me. Why would I agree to that? Because you think you can control it. You think I'll come crawling. One last curtain call. One last apology. And will you? Jungkook smiled. You already lost the war. But I'm offering you a funeral worth attending. The deal was struck. The press exploded. Jungkook returns. The redemption. They billed it as a concert. A reconciliation. A restoration. What it was a trap. One he had built with Yoongi, with Suha, with every survivor who still carried a voice. The venue sold out in 2 hours. Hundreds of thousands watching via live stream. And when the lights came up, Jungkook walked on stage with a mic and nothing else. No dancers. No spectacle. Just silence. He looked into the crowd, then into the cameras. This isn't a performance, he said. This is a confession. And for the next hour, he told them everything. The abuse. The manipulation. The names. The faces. The hidden files. He called them out one by one. And then he said, I will not sing tonight. Because I'm not your fantasy anymore. I am a father. I am a man. And I will not smile on command. He walked off the stage. Mike still lived. The sound of his footsteps echoed like a drumbeat. And somewhere in a small house on another continent, Jeon watched and whispered, That's my appa. And the world finally understood. The curtain hadn't fallen. It had been burnt. By the very man they once told to stay silent. The city hadn't slept since the broadcast. Soul pulsed like a living wound, split open by the words of a man they once placed on a throne. Jungkook's confession, the unfiltered, raw, furious collapse of a 10-year lie, was now carved into history. No songs, no encore, no dance breaks, just truth. And truth, it turned out, was more dangerous than any scandal. That night, the agency's CEO, Choi Gwangmin, was rushed to a private clinic after collapsing in his office, blood pressure spiking, veins choked with a decade's worth of stress, betrayal, and power slipping through his fists. Half the board resigned within 24 hours. The stock tanked. Brands that once fought to place their logos on Jungkook's wristbands now released frantic statements distancing themselves from the systems under scrutiny. But none of that mattered. Not to Jungkook. Not anymore. He was already gone. No press saw him leave the stage. No black SUV. No handlers. He exited through a service stairwell in the back of the building, accompanied only by Yoongi, who kept one hand on his back like he was steadying someone walking away from battlefield. Blood still soaked Jungkook's sleeve, not from injury, but from where he'd clutched his palm too tightly during the final address, digging his nails into old scars. His voice was hoarse. His legs buckled once on the stairs. I think, he muttered, I might finally be empty. Yoongi didn't speak. Not yet. They walked in silence through the bowels of the concert hall, where rookies had once rehearsed choreo with bleeding toes and broken hopes, where Jungkook had once sat on a cold floor whispering, I just want to sing. They exited through a maintenance door into a back alley that stank of mold, beer, and dying neon. A car waited. Inside was Suha. She didn't speak either. Not when she saw the blood. Not when she saw the weight behind his eyes. She just opened the door. Jeon wasn't with her. Not anymore. They'd made the decision days earlier. She was in Japan now, under a different name, with Yoongi's cousin, an unassuming high school teacher with a warm apartment and no ties to anyone in Korea's entertainment underworld. It broke something in Jungkook to be away from her. But it was the only way to keep her from becoming a bullet point on another company's crisis management memo. They drove in silence, until Suha whispered, You shouldn't have done that. He turned slowly. You mean the speech? No. I mean walking away alone. Again, I wasn't alone. I had Yoongi. That's not what I meant. He sighed, leaned back, shut his eyes. It had to be this way. You could have died, Jungkook. I was already dead. This is just the part where the body finally notices. She didn't argue. She'd spent too long screaming into the void of his guilt to waste more breath on trying to fix what only he could rebuild. Yoongi drove them to a safe house outside Incheon, a place with no address, no digital footprint, and no history. The building itself was once used to train backup dancers. Now it smelled like salt and rust, and the end of something unspeakably big. There were no beds, just mats on the floor, blankets, bottled water, and weapons, neatly stored in a duffel in the corner. Because they knew the fallout hadn't peaked yet. That would come at dawn. Jungkook sat on the floor, back against the wall, staring at nothing. Yoongi sat across from him, rolling a cigarette he wouldn't light. Suha paced. "They're going to retaliate," she said finally. "No," Yoongi replied. "They're going to destroy everything. They'll come after us. They already have." Suha's voice cracked. "Then what are we doing here? Waiting to be erased?" Jungkook didn't move. "No." "Then what?" He finally looked up. "We go to the last room." Yoongi's fingers paused. "You're serious?" "I've been serious since they tried to kill my child." Suha blinked. "What room?" "The archive," Yoongi said. "The original one. Sublevel 0. Below the basement, they never put on the blueprints." Jungkook stood slowly. "They keep the originals there. The erased contracts. The blacklists. The footage. Everything they were afraid would resurface. Including the voice logs." Suha's breath caught. "Voice logs? Of trainees," Yoongi said. "Forced therapy sessions. Confessions. Panic attacks. The raw truth before the brand got its hands on them." Jungkook grabbed his jacket. "If we take that room, it's over." "No," Yoongi stood too. "If we take that room, it's war." And yet they went. They didn't wait for backup. They didn't wait for protection. This wasn't for the court of public opinion. This was for the children who'd grown up believing the lie of perfection, who looked at polished faces on LED screens and didn't see the bruises under the foundation. They arrived at 3:08 a.m. The agency building was under heavy surveillance, but not yet in lockdown. The chaos of resignations had fractured internal communication. The guards on duty were distracted, paid enough to keep eyes open, not to stop ghosts from returning. Yoongi hacked the elevator manually. They descended into a level that didn't exist on any fire drill map. Sublevel 0. The walls were lined with steel. The hallway lights flickered as if they were breathing. Jungkook led. He remembered the way. He remembered the cold, the hum of the generators, the echo of forgotten footsteps. They reached the door. A biometric lock. Yoongi placed a small device against the panel. It hissed, cracked, sparked. The lock failed. The door opened. Inside were rows of servers, tapes, file drawers, every whisper that had ever been silenced in exchange for a stage. They stepped inside, and the lights shut off. Complete blackout. A sound behind them. Not boots. Bare feet. Suha reached for Jungkook's hand. Then a voice. "You really thought you were the first." A girl stepped from the shadows. No older than Jeon. Eyes too bright. Too dead. "I was here before you." Jungkook's voice trembled. "Who are you?" She smiled. "My name doesn't matter, but my story will." And behind her, the lights returned. Thousands of files, thousands of voices, and one monitor, live streaming, already broadcasting, already watching. The world would hear it all. No turning back. No silence left. The archive had become the stage. And this time, everyone was watching. The girl who stepped from the shadows didn't blink. She didn't flinch. She stood barefoot, wrapped in a faded hoodie 3 sizes too big, sleeves torn at the wrists, the hem stained with time. Her face was familiar and unfamiliar, like a photo the world had once seen but was told to forget. Suha instinctively stepped in front of Jungkook. But the girl only raised one hand, calm, deliberate. "I'm not here to stop you." Yoongi's voice cut through the thick silence. "Then what the hell are you doing here?" The girl's eyes flicked to him. "Finishing what I started." Jungkook stared at her. Something in his memory stirred. A whisper, a name, a half-remembered file passed across a trainee dorm table nearly a decade ago. A rumor. "You were in Unit Black," he said softly. The girl smiled. "For 5 days. Then I disappeared." Unit Black, the lost group. The trainees who had filmed a pilot showcase, trained for 2 years, shot their debut MV, and were never heard from again. Not canceled. Not disbanded. Erased. Yoongi's voice was low, measured. What's your name? She looked at him. Kang Min-seo. Born 2005. Signed under pseudonym Sarah. Diagnosed with general anxiety disorder during contract cycle. Blacklisted after refusing to remove her father's name from her emergency contact sheet. Labeled unstable and sent to medical sabbatical. Jungkook's jaw clenched. You were 16. Min-seo nodded. And pregnant. Sua gasped. Yoongi's voice dropped to a whisper. Dear God. I tried to run, Min-seo continued. They caught me before I made it to the ferry. I woke up in a medical clinic. Empty. They said it was for my future. That I'd thank them one day. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking. She was colder than any weapon Jungkook had ever seen. And infinitely more dangerous. They left me in this building for 2 months after that. Said I could work as admin archive assistant. Only ever during closed hours. I memorized this place like my own grave. Why are you helping us? Sua asked, voice hoarse. Min-seo looked at her, then at Jungkook. Because you did what I couldn't. You screamed. You bled in front of the world. You made them feel something. And now it's my turn. She walked to the main server. The monitor behind her glowed brighter. Live stream still rolling. Everything in here is time-coded and tagged, she said. Abuse reports. Confidential memos. Expulsion notes. Alter contracts. Fake diagnosis templates. I've been leaking bits and pieces for over 2 years through proxy accounts. But it wasn't enough. I needed someone like you to light the fuse. She tossed a small remote onto the table. A red button glowed at the center. What is that? Yoongi asked. Min-seo looked at him. That's the trigger. Jungkook picked it up slowly. For what? The mirror protocol. A full system broadcast. Every file in this room, audio, video, written, will be mirrored onto a decentralized cloud. Once activated, nothing can stop it. It'll hit the darknet first. Then servers in Russia, Germany, Iceland, New Zealand. Every safe harbor for leaked data. Yoongi's face darkened. That means you're unleashing everything. Even files on trainees still active. Yes. Even the ones who don't want to be named. Yes. That's not justice. That's crossfire. Min-seo's voice was ice. You think this war ends with a clean list of names? A neat truth? No. It ends when there's nowhere left for them to hide. Jungkook was silent. His thumb hovered over the button. Sua stepped forward. Don't. Not yet. Not until we find a way to separate the willing from the protected. You won't get another chance, Min-seo said. The building is bugged. They know someone's down here. You got maybe 20 minutes before everything shuts down and this room is buried in static. We'll find another way, Sua said. Give us time. Min-seo's jaw trembled for the first time. They killed my baby. Sua stepped closer. And you deserve justice. But if you do this without consent, you'll destroy people who don't even know they're in danger yet. Jungkook looked down at the red button, then back at Min-seo. You're not wrong, he said quietly. But neither is she. He turned to Yoongi. We need a workaround. We send a preliminary burst, 1 hour's worth of files. Selective drop. Enough to fracture them. Shake the structure. Then we give survivors the choice. Let them come forward on their terms. Yoongi nodded. Could do it in 10 minutes if I work fast. Jungkook looked at Min-seo. We're not walking away. But we're not becoming them either. Min-seo didn't move. For a long time, it seemed like she might grab the button herself. Then she stepped back. I'll give you 10. Yoongi moved fast. Fingers flying across keys. He rewrote the mirroring protocol to segment release windows. Attached opt-out filters based on confidential ID codes. Jungkook and Sua stood guard. Min-seo stared at the screen. The live chat was exploding. Tens of millions watching now. Some were crying. Some were swearing. Some were begging for names. And some were offering theirs. Yoongi looked up. It's ready. Jungkook looked at the red button again. Then at the camera. And for the first time since he was 16, he spoke without fear of who might be listening. To the ones still trapped, still voiceless, still hidden beneath foundation and contracts and threats, we see you. We are you. You choose what happens next. Not them. You. He pressed the button, and the world broke open. Footage flooded the net like a tsunami. A voice recording of a male idol sobbing in a stairwell whispering, "I don't want to be perfect anymore." A video of a manager screaming at a 16-year-old girl to lose 5 kilos or lose her debut. A hidden camera clip of a choreographer coercing a minor trainee in exchange for screen time. The internet didn't just explode. It tore at the seams. Within an hour, journalists began confirming sources. Within 6, the government announced a formal investigation. Within 12, Choi Gwangmin was arrested. Within 24, the agency was raided. And Minseo, she disappeared, left the building in the chaos, never seen again. But her name became legend. Jungkook didn't give interviews. He didn't release a statement. He simply walked away from the building, Suha beside him, hand in his. Outside, fans waited. Not with posters, but with candles. Signs that read, "You don't belong to US, but we stand with you." Jungkook stopped once, held Suha's hand tighter, and whispered, "Let's go home." They left Seoul that night. By sea, by silence, by choice. In Japan, Jeon was waiting. The moment she saw them, she ran straight into Jungkook's arms and asked, "Did you sing?" He shook his head. "No." "Did you scream?" "Yes." She nodded. "Good. Screaming means you're still real." He kissed her forehead, and for the first time in years, he felt real. No stage, no script, just a man who burned the house he was caged in and built a home with the ashes. Not for applause, but for the daughter who knew him best. Because she was never his weakness. She was his beginning. The world did not end when the truth was set free. It only became louder. In the weeks that followed the archive leak, the entertainment industry was cracked open like a rotted shell. Laws were rewritten overnight. Investigations moved from dormant committees to emergency tribunals. Whistleblowers flooded forums. Anonymous survivors held hands with faces finally willing to step into the light. No company remained untouched. Some folded, some rebranded, some screamed innocence while burning their archives before investigators arrived. And some, very few, apologized. Jungkook did none of that. He disappeared again, this time not into hiding, but into living. Real, raw, anonymous. No bodyguards, no agencies, no curated mystique. Just him, Suha, and Jeon in a 2-bedroom cottage in coastal Hokkaido, where the mountains met the sea and no one gave a damn about K-pop or corporate empires. He woke every morning to the scent of rice porridge and paint. Jeon had started painting again. Wild, messy, chaotic shapes filled with fire and wind and sky. Suha wrote stories. Jungkook listened. He'd never truly done that before. Listened not as an artist or a figure or brand, but as a man, a father, a partner. He listened to the silence between her words, the breath she took when she wasn't brave enough to cry out loud, the way Jeon hummed to herself when she thought no one was around, the way they lived without apology. The world continued, of course. Fans still sent letters, though fewer now. They trickled in like ghosts, grateful, broken, reborn. Some angry, some confused, but almost all of them carrying the same thread. "I see myself now, because you finally showed me who you were." Sometimes Jungkook would sit on the porch with his guitar and hum unfinished melodies. He never wrote them down, never recorded. Once Sue asked him why. He shrugged, "Because I don't need to capture it anymore." "But what if the world wants to hear again?" He smiled. "Then they'll have to come sit right here." Yoongi visited only once. He didn't knock. He stood outside the house, watching the tide roll in, cigarette unlit between his lips. "You could have been the biggest artist in the world," he said. "I was," Jungkook replied. "Didn't like it." Yoongi smirked. "I didn't either." They didn't say goodbye. They never needed to. Suha grew bolder. Her voice came back. Not the quiet, scared voice from years ago, the one that trembled under fluorescent lights and threats, but the voice that cracked when she laughed too hard, when she argued with him over dishwashing, when she whispered to Jeon at night about stars and wind and names the world tried to erase. Jeon started school. Her teachers never asked about her father's past. Her classmates didn't care that he once stood on world stages. They care more about how he made the best seaweed soup in town and how he played guitar on Friday afternoons while their parents picked them up. One winter evening, while snow fell in silver sheets, Jeon sat at the kitchen table drawing a bird with wings made of names. "What are those?" Sua asked, brushing flour off her hands as she baked. "The names of all the people Appa helped," Jeon said, chewing on her pencil. "You remember all of them?" Jeon frowned. "No, but I think the bird does." Jungkook walked in moments later, scarf around his neck, cheeks flushed from the cold. He looked at the drawing, and for the first time in what felt like lifetimes, he cried not out of grief, but peace. That night, he sat down with Jeon by the fire. She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Appa, yeah. Are you famous again now?" He laughed softly. "No, baby. Good," she said. "I don't like sharing you." He kissed her forehead. "You never have to." Later, he and Sua stood on the porch, stars cracking the night open. "They still talk about you," she said. "I know. Some still hate you. I know. Some still want you to come back." He took her hand. "I already did." She looked up. "I love you." And this time, he didn't hesitate. "I know," he said. "And I love you back." Jeon danced barefoot inside, spinning in her pajamas, singing to herself. There was no audience, no cameras, no stage, only the sound of a child who didn't know what it meant to be afraid of her own name. And in that house, between the rice and the ink and the sea, Jungkook finally became what the world never let him be. A man, a father, a truth no longer hidden. And somewhere out there, in bedrooms and buses and dormitories filled with trembling kids still clutching contracts written in fear, 1,000 small voices whispered, "If he could survive it, maybe so can I." And that was the loudest sound of all.